know when to get help. It's not only impacting you, but it's impacting your child, your family, etc. It's a sign of strength when you know you need help and you ask for help. Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of five, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. of Dad Central, who's enjoying the summer and who's enjoying a clean-shaven friend beside me.
Drew Solon of Dad Central, enjoying the summer as well. And this is actually like 3 days worth of growth. So I'm glad it still looks so clean shaven to you. All right.
All right. Well, today we are talking about another important topic. We're diving into something really, really important that every parent worries about, your child's mental health. But more importantly, we're looking at how you as a dad can play a powerful role in supporting it. And just out of, there are going to be some stats that we're going to share with you during this episode. One I'm going to just share right out is that 1 in 5 kids struggle with their mental health, and dads often don't know where or how to step in. But the 3 things we're going to chat about today: why your role matters, signs your child may be struggling, and 4 ways dads can support their child's mental health. Drew, before we get into it, what are your thoughts on this conversation topic?
I remember talking with Dr. Stuart Shanker probably back in 2023, and he talked about they were seeing an explosion of child and youth related stress disorders. And I mean, since then, we've just seen more and more data coming out about the overall well-being of our young people. And to me, it's really important. I mean, I don't want to dismiss the fact that I think adults are all also struggling. Going through COVID, and that was pretty significant. More than it was really significant. And the aftermath and what's going on in the world. There is so much that potentially could be impacting our mental health, and so I think it's an important topic.
Let's go to our first segment. Why your role matters as a dad in this. Talk about it, Drew.
Well, I think the myth that we often believe is, and this is born out of cultural or just sort of stereotypical, moms, they handle the emotions, dads handle the discipline. And don't get me wrong, moms are wired in a very nurturing way naturally, and dads are very often results and task oriented. But the reality is that both moms and dads can play both roles, and both moms and dads have roles in supporting our children when it comes to regulating, managing, or even just understanding and naming our emotions. Because guess what? We're all emotional beings. Every marketer knows that. But people don't make decisions based off of fact. They make decisions based off of emotion. And you, dad, yes, you that's listening and thinking, I don't know, but yes, it is 100% true. Why is it that you get to a certain age and you go and you buy the convertible sports car? Did they sell you on fact? No, they sold you on a dream, on something that is deep inside that emotion, and that's why you bought that car. The reality is that's we're all emotional, and so the more we understand dads have a role to play in this, it's crucial. And I want to talk about some research that proves this. And so this is an excerpt from a research study that was done in 2023, the role of fathers in children's emotion regulation development. And this is a review. So they looked at a whole bunch of studies, I think 40 studies. And here's what it says. This review reveals that several factors: fathers' modeling of emotional regulation strategies, positive reactions and support in responding to their child's expression of emotions, better quality of the father-child relationship, and higher father-child attachment security and positive parenting in terms of sensitivity, engagement, and expressiveness had significant associations with children's higher emotional regulation skills. It also goes on to say, conversely, fathers' psychopathology and harsh parenting were associated with poorer emotional regulation skills in children. So, dads, what this is essentially saying is the more that we engage in positive, supportive, empathetic compassionate parenting and recognizing emotions and communicating emotions with our children, the better they get at managing and regulating their emotions. And so we play a significant role in that. And so, the reality is that when you are emotionally engaged with your children, it makes a big difference for them.
Yeah. I there's not too much I want to add on to that. And just that the research shows it, right? The research just shows the more engagement you have with your child or children, the better potential outcomes come from the children, your relation with your children, and yourself. So it's a three win to me. It's a three
Yeah.
win. So really good in that breaking down. Thanks for bringing some of that information, Drew.
I want to add two more things, right? So not only is emotional regulation, but it also impacts child self-esteem. And so when dads are engaged or communicating and also allowing them feeling to feel safe enough to express emotions without criticizing or dismissing their emotions, children learn that their emotions matter, that they have value, and it helps really with their self-concept, their feeling of I have value and I matter to somebody else enough that they'll actually receive and hear and acknowledge that I have these feelings. So the other part of that is, I think every parent wants to raise confident children. The reality is the more that we engage in this, we support their self-concept, their self-development. So that to me is really foundational. It helps them feel like, again, they matter. And that's really crucial because that's why I think we have so many mental health struggles because people really struggle with feeling that they matter.
Next. All right, let's move into our point two here today. Signs your child might be struggling. So I don't know if you want to give some personal insight of that, Drew, or research stuff, but what are some signs that you've seen either through research or if you want to share from your own journey as a father that children may be struggling?
Yeah, I think there are, your child best, typically as a parent. And so, if you've observed them for years and there's been a specific pattern and all of a sudden that pattern shifts, you're going to be the best person to be able to identify that sooner than most others. Now, of course, these signs are often hidden or harder to tell. So while that may be true, sometimes you actually have to look a little bit under the surface and you have to begin asking some questions. And I think that's where, if you have the suspicion, then I would encourage dads to then, obviously have a conversation if you have a partner and sort of get on the same page. But then also just gently test the waters in ways that you can to try and assess this. And so but let's talk practically. There are some common things that you would maybe see if your child could potentially be struggling. So things like withdrawal, especially if they were formerly a very social person, but they all of a sudden don't want to be engaged. They don't want to, even go to family things. They don't want to go out with their friends. They don't want to go to their sporting events. That can be a sign. Significant mood changes. Now, I have preteen girls and hormones play a huge part in that time. So yes, while we're seeing some mood changes, we know that that's age appropriate. So you have to think about it though. But if you're 7, 8, 9 year old is all of a sudden like these drastic mood changes, maybe that's something to look into. Or even if you're an older teenager, 16, 17, you're starting to see that maybe that's also things like sudden anger, some sleep or appetite shifts, loss of interest in things that normally would gravitate them towards them. That's those are signs. These are things that we've observed in our family, in that one of our children all of a sudden will not be hungry when we know they generally have a good appetite. And if that persists for a day or two, it usually comes along with some other signs. But there's an example, right, of this practically what it looks like, and there's often things that go on. And so, as I said, parents, you'll know your children better than anyone. These are important signs. If you're thinking about younger kids, the other thing you can think about is developmentally, you typically see some path, right, where they continue to grow and improve. And sometimes they surprise you, like, wow, this is really cool. But sometimes what you'll notice is some regression. And so regression could be a sign that there's something impacting your child. And so I think that we've observed this a little bit in Eliana, just because some of the stress that has happened recently in her family. And I think we see things like that. Oh, so that those can be signs. Now, of course, if they're long term, that's when you start to really begin to see more of this. Other things like clinginess, or in particular tantrums, the outburst, the emotional, because when children are younger, they don't have the vocabulary, they don't even have the awareness. Like under the age of 7, they're completely ruled by emotions, which is their limbic brain, right? And so that's where, everything that comes out of them is a sign that there's something going on the inside. So these are practical things to really look for. And one of the things that is often, especially when younger children, is this idea, man, this kid's behavior is just off the charts. Like it's so erratic, it's so challenging. They're really pushing my buttons. But here's the thing, that is an outward sign that there's an unmet need. And so that's where we really want to encourage you not to think of my child is really acting out, or is they're actually having a hard time and they need some support from me as a parent. Anyways, those are some thoughts, Ed. What do you would
Yeah.
like to add?
The only thing I would add on to that is that we want to make sure you're listening without judgment is really important, and responding with curiosity, not correction. Think that's really, really important when a child is trying. And I think it's no different than with adults. Like we want to, as best as possible, listen without judgment and respond with curiosity, not correction. Especially with our children. Again, they're not developed emotionally as we are, as dads, male caregivers, etc. We want to listen without judgment because, again, your behavior patterns may be molded by them as they get older. So it's really, really important to, I want to emphasize that listening without judgment is really, really important in regards to that. Before we move on, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think that
Okay.
that's good.
Yeah. So our segment 3, what are some ways dads can support their child's mental health? What do you have?
And we got 4 things to talk about here. The first thing is create an open space for conversations. And so this is really an opportunity to, as Ed, you've used this phrase many times, create a safe but also brave space where children feel empowered, or that it's okay to put out things that are maybe hard to hear, or maybe challenging, because you as a parent are not going to overreact, you're not going to chastise them, you're not going to get upset about the fact that they've shared something. You're going to just simply listen calmly, or actively listen in a way that encourages them to continue sharing more. And so this is what I would call a just a healthy relationship habit. And so while we're talking about it in the context of mental health, it truly is, when you have a healthy relationship, the person you're in relationship with should ultimately feel safe enough to bring to you their heaviest, scariest, sometimes most like challenging, thoughts, behaviors, actions, anything, and know that it's going to be okay. And back to your point of being not judgmental. And so, if you are feeling like you are not necessarily there, then this is where partnering with someone who's close to you or close to your child and working together to make sure that there is a safe space for your child is really important. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for you, if you have that capacity, then one thing you can simply do is ask simple, regular check-in questions without pressure. If they are able to answer, great. If they don't want to answer, no pressure that they have to answer. Just knowing that you're there and you care is, I think, really important. But hopefully, when the time comes, they're also able to share. That's one for me. How about two from you, Ed?
Be calm in the storm. Again, easier said than done. Manage your own reactions first. I remember one of my first mentors in the fatherhood space said to me, "Kids replicate what they emulate." So if you're not calm in the storm, don't expect them to maybe be calm in the storm either. So manage your reactions first. And I always like to come back to our great resource, Super Dad, Super Kids, which is a parenting course for dads. One of the key messages in that is when something goes wrong. It's not if, but when something goes wrong, 3-step process. What happened, why it happened, and what's the next best thing to do? So that is the number 2. What's number 3?
Model healthy mental habits, which I love the old adage, much more is caught than taught, which go aligns with what you just shared. But this is very specific to your own emotions, your own stress, and how you cope or regulate your own emotions, your own mental health. And so, are you establishing healthy boundaries around the parts of your life that need boundaries so that you can reduce your stress? Are you setting aside quiet time for yourself, that 15 minutes? Are you communicating when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed or worried or fearful or focused or determined, whatever it is? Are you communicating that on a regular basis in healthy ways? Are you, when you're finding yourself a little bit overworked or stressed, are you communicating that to your family? Hey, I'm feeling a little bit overworked or overburdened or stressed right now. I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk to be able to calm myself down. Or are you actually, are you stress eating? Or are you, medicating by just like putting yourself in front of Netflix and binging Netflix for, 4 hours at night instead of actually going to bed on time and getting up? Are you, putting off the gym? Are you putting off going and visiting with friends or hanging out with people that, really help, you feel valued and supported? Are your habits and the things you're doing showing your children how they can learn to have positive mental health, or are they potentially, repeating unhealthy cycles, unhealthy patterns that they're going to pick up and learn, right? Because much more is caught than taught.
Yeah. And then
Ed,
finally,
number four.
number four. And this is not only in general life, but especially when it comes to being a dad, know when to get help, right? Normalize therapy, school counselors, community support, because if you need help and you know you need help, it's not only impacting you, but it's impacting your child, your family, etc. So a lot of people asking for help is one of the most challenging things, but it's also, to me, it's a sign of strength when you know you need help and you ask for help. Not going to get any more detail. I said it right to the point. It's done. Let's go over our 3 points today. First point, we talked about why your role matters. And the takeaway there is, dads, you don't need to be a mental health expert to make a major difference. You just need to be present, consistent, and open. Then we talked about signs your child may be struggling. And the takeaway there is, paying attention to behavior shifts can reveal your child is struggling emotionally. And then finally, we talked about 4 ways dads can support their child's mental health. And there, the key thing, building trust and safety for open conversations is the best foundation for lifelong mental wellness. Drew, do we have a resource for our listeners?
Yeah, I think a good resource would be the 7-step guide to calm, or more peaceful parenting. I think that's always helpful, especially if you're finding yourself reactive or finding yourself struggling with your own mental health and the stresses of life, because that 7-step guide really does ask you some powerful questions and helps you begin to reflect and identify for yourself what's actually going on under the surface, which will then ultimately walk you through a process to be able to then manage that better and be able to communicate it and involve those in your life in healthier ways. So, 7-step guide to calmer, more peaceful parenting.
Good. So as we close today, I got 3 reflections, called actions. One, I'm going to ask, if you're listening or watching this, what would you say? What would your child say if someone said, "Can you talk to your dad when you're feeling overwhelmed?" It's a good question. Can you talk to your dad when you're feeling overwhelmed? The next up, I want to encourage dads to start the conversation. Hey, how are you really doing? Ask yourself, dads, how are you really doing? And then finally, I want to invite dads to notice one moment this week to connect emotionally, not just solve a problem, connect emotionally with your child. So, as always, I want to say thank you for watching. You are watching Dad Central Parenting Podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And also, our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care because Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. And as always, want to say thank you for Drew has one more thing he wants to add. Go for it.
Yeah, and I just want to say that if you've been listening to the show and you're getting value, you have something that's you're able to apply to your life and you're seeing a difference, we just want to say thank you. And I would really appreciate if you would take a moment to give us a review on Apple or rate us on any of the other podcast platforms. But I think specifically Spotify has ratings because our goal is to continue to serve and support fathers everywhere. And so the more that you review and rate the show, the more that helps get the show into other people's hands who are really looking for resources and support. We know that the resources for fathers, while they're growing, they're still significantly limited, and we need more of them out there. So your help in getting this in front of those who are looking for would be greatly appreciated.
Very important. As always, thank you for giving the most important thing, your time to us. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll see you soon. Take care.